Good evening and welcome to the July 6, 2016 Milton School Committee meeting. As is our tradition, please join me in pledging allegiance to our flag and our country. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. If you would, please join me in a moment of silence. Over the last couple of weeks, we lost two members of the Milton school community, Paula Lane and Kevin Moore. Paula Lane was a longtime para at the Pierce Middle School, and Kevin was a Milton Public School student and graduated of Blue Hills Regional. So, if you would, just for a moment of silence. Thank you. So approve the agenda for this evening. Any additions, deletions?
I think for the long-range planning, I don't think we have an attachment or a vote. Or do we?
We don't have an attachment. I may suggest a conditional vote, and I'll tell you all why when we get to that agenda item. But other than that, I think we're good. So, anyone for citizen speak more? Okay. Superintendent Gormley.
I'd like to ask to join us at the table Kathleen Kelly and Ben Kelly, no relation. High school. Kathleen Kelly is a very gifted and talented history teacher at Milton High School, and Ben Kelly is Milton High School's assistant principal. They have been working with Assistant Superintendent Janet Sheehan on the planning of a field trip. In my absence at the last meeting, I think the school committee has some questions. Assistant Superintendent Sheehan's going to address those questions, and as we call it formally, Kay Kelly has done a preparation for tonight, so I appreciate them leaving their families and vacations to come and address this, and for their dedication to wanting to make this happen for students, and for Janet Sheehan for working with them.
So, Chairman Walker?
Yes.
If I could just note that school committee members did ask for the history of Milton High School field trips, which will be addressed. Additionally, your questions included, is there access for all students? How do we know that all students will have equal access to participation? You had asked if there was a cap on the number of students who can participate. There was discussion about how information is communicated to students and parents during the planning year, and asked also about fundraising. How would fundraising impact the ability of students to access participation? There was another question about behavioral issues. What is the history of any issues that have come up? And then there was a request to clarify information about chaperones, and there was a revision in the proposal just to clarify there was an error in the ratio of students to chaperones. So turn it over to Ms. Kelly.
I think just a little bit more context. I think that I said at that last meeting, and I would say again, I'm a big fan of international travel. I think it expands horizons in a way that nothing else can. So I think this is a great idea. Part of the concern was that the $35,000 price tag for the trip might exclude $3,500 might exclude some students who could benefit most. So part of the question was, is there a way to address that? And
okay. So let me just start with the history. I started this in 2005. At that time, I know that the language department did some trips, but they went and lived in people's homes, and it was mostly just to France at that time. So I started in 2005. I've been doing it since. For many years, we went every year. You know, I had a hip replacement, we didn't go. And then we started last year to do every other year. So we've been doing, I think I've done 9 trips so far. So that's the history of it. I think that one of the things, how do we address availability to all students? So when I set the trip up, before I just look for student interest. So for about a week and a half, there's announcements every morning, you know, same announcement. Hey, if you're interested in travel, come to Kate Kelly's room 229, and it tells them when it is. And, you know, I'm gonna explain the trip, and if you're interested, you know, come see and hear about it. So this year, I did that in February, and my classroom overflowed with students. EF Tours called me like 3 days later and said, I can save $300 per student if you can get someone to sign up now. I said, I cannot do that because the school committee has to okay this. They said, what if I get you a letter saying that all the students will get their money back if school committee does not approve it? And I said, well, I could do that because I was looking to save the money for the students, which it did end up saving. We have 40 students on the trip. The cap is a busload. Because if I can't see you, I can't be responsible for you. So we never take more than 1 busload. So right now we have 40 students that did sign up and put their 95 down. The minute they do that, EF Tours sets them up. They each have their own website. And I gave you guys, I think I put in front of everybody a handout that looks like this. And it's kind of ideas that EF Tours gives you to raise the money and the funds to go on the trip. It is a very expensive trip, and when you think about 40 students at $3,500 each, it comes up to about $140,000. If we did car washes, I mean, I think if we made $1,000 in car wash, it would be $25 off per student. So that's why I definitely set them up in February to save $300 per student. So that's kind of like a $12,000 fundraiser. Now, can these kids, is it accessible to all the kids? I feel yes it is, because these are high school kids. They can all get jobs. If this is what they're really into, they can get a job. My own son went on a trip and he had to pay half of the money. I said, you get a job, you pay half of it, you're welcome to go. And if he didn't really want to go, he wouldn't have raised the money. When I looked at the list of students we have, just so that I could address you, I looked at percentages. Right now, we have between 8 and 10% of low-income students that have signed up and put money down, and they have told me they're going to work all summer. And this letter that I give them where they can get donations, this just basically explains, and then like they can get people to sponsor them. My 2 nephews went on a trip because my brother had twins, couldn't afford to send both of them. They sent these letters out to us all. And it gives you the whole itinerary. Hey, do you want to sponsor lunch in Madrid or dinner here? And we all pitched in and sent them to different places. So that's how they raised half of their money. So that's what this is. So this is kind of more of a donation. And then EF Tour has an actual donation site. So you there's a spot for the kids to fill in their link that they get from EF. I can go to that link and I can drop money into their account, and it pays down some of their trip. If you don't feel comfortable to saying, hey, will you sponsor me? There's other, they have other suggestions where the kids can do community service or do some kind of volunteer work. Hey, I'll give you $100 worth of work if you put $25 down on my trip. And there's many different ways. And then I give these letters out saying that, they are working with an adult, MHS is backing them in this, on this trip and stuff. So I feel like that's another way that the kids can raise the money. And I can say year after year, I've had kids that are definitely, in low-income families that have come because travel's their thing and they got a summer job. And there's 4, I usually set it up a year in advance so that the price will be as low as possible. So that means that there's almost 4 different times that you can, if, hey, I definitely want to do that senior year, you can plan for that, to say, hey, that's my goal, to get a job by senior year and save the money to go. So I think that if it was younger kids, you know, it wouldn't be in their hands, but I feel like that's what we're trying to teach them to do, right? Be responsible for themselves, and you know, if this is something you really want, go out and obtain it, you know. So does that answer that part of it? Yes.
One of the things Kathleen has done so well is plan this trip 14 plus months in advance. So I think that really speaks to the kids' ability to go out with their families and raise this money, again, if it's
Right.
what they really want to, what they want to do. So there's a lot of opportunities out there. And in reviewing the student list, again, that Kathleen mentioned, it's great to see that the demographics of the school are represented by the demographics of those
It really
40
is.
kids who have signed up.
Right. And I think 35% of the students that have signed up are students of color. So I feel like everybody is represented, you know, on the trip this year. And most years. What was one of the other things I have to address? Behavior and how we deal with behavior. Was that? For the last, since 2010, I have not had any behavioral problems. In 2010, we were planning on going in April. We had a volcano. Who would have thought that? And we could not travel in April, and we had to travel in June. I had talked to Dr. Drada saying, I'm very nervous about taking these kids. They've all graduated already. You know, I have nothing to hold over them. You can't walk if you don't follow the rules. I had nothing. And we did have incidents where students did drink, and I brought it right back to the school. It was 2 days before we were coming home, and I brought it right back to school. I spoke to every parent at the airport before they could get away from me, because I knew I was never going to see them again because they had graduated. But I definitely reported it to every parent and then reported it back to the school. But since 2005, I've never had a student I had to send home. You know, I've had a few kids have colds or, you know, sore throats, and have had to play mom, you know, many times. But for the most part, you know, these kids are amazing. I just definitely think they're amazing. I asked one of my students that went last year, if I have to go in front of school committee, can you give me a quote that I can maybe use? I said, what was your favorite thing about the trip? And it gets me teary-eyed, but he said, I had friends in the halls of Milton High when I returned. You know, and so it kind of, it reaches out to those kids that, you know, feel kind of like lonely or they don't fit in, and they go on these trips and they find themselves, you know, being stars on the trip. You know, this kid put a pair of sunglasses on the trip, and all of a sudden everyone thought he was a movie star. And, you know, and he was the senior class president's best friend when he returned, you know. And he goes, oh no, I could never go there and say that. I said, okay, I'll say it. So I feel like it's definitely available to all the kids. As far as addressing behavior also, before we leave, we have many meetings. We have meetings to teach them about the culture. We have meetings to teach about the history of the places that we're going to see. And we have a meeting where we have to meet with every single parent. If you and your parent can't show up, then you have a special meeting with me, but you're not going until you all sign off on this contract saying that I know how to behave and I will behave properly. So we have them sign the contracts. We meet with every single person. There's another sheet I gave you. This is not for this year. This is one I've used in years past, but I can't put the yearly one together until we know what we're doing. But this is like everything I go over with the parents and the students together. It's behavior, it's, you know, what kind of money you need to, you know, when you're there, it's how to behave. You know, I do a lot of research on each country that we go to, you know, so I know the rules and regulations of that country. Hey, if you do this in this country, this is the consequence. And we go over that with the parent and the student, you know, so that nobody has a question on what is expected of them.
Our student handbook as well and your field trip policy state very clearly that expectation for behavior is the same whether you're at an away hockey game, you're in the hallways of Milton High School, or if you're in Barcelona. And I know after speaking with Mr. McEnaugh, Mr. Jett today, all three of us are on board to make sure we hold the students accountable for their actions, whether it happens on the plane, the airport, our hallway, or again in a cafe in Barcelona.
And EF Tour also is, you know, I think I put this on, they make it easy for students to pay because they give easy payment plans. You know, I hadn't set it up yet because I was just, you know, thinking that maybe this we'd see school committee before I did a certain thing, so I was holding off. And one of the girls said, Miss Cal, I have already set aside the money that I can spend and the money that I have to pay for my trip. When are you gonna set that up so I can make a payment? I said, can't you just slide it into your bank account until it's time to put it in? But they definitely try to help you out, and I definitely address insurance with the kids, because the year of the volcano, you know, the reason why we had to go in June was if they didn't buy the insurance, then they lost their money, because it was Mother Nature. So, that's why we did end up going in June. So they, for $155, they can cover their whole trip. If they got, you know, one student, you know, definitely got really ill before we left and couldn't go on the trip, and got all their money back. And that was like 2 weeks prior to departure, because they did have the insurance. So I definitely suggest that people get the insurance. Just, that covers all your belongings. Somebody lost their iPhone, it was covered, you know, so I try to talk them into doing that. I think, did I answer everything? Do you have any other questions for me?
Could you just clarify the information about the chaperones and ratio?
So every time we have 6 students, we get to add another chaperone. And a lot of this I've learned through past experiences. You know, I take teachers, because the teachers know what the kids try to get away with. A couple of times I have allowed parents, and the parents are, that's okay. I go, no, it's not. You know, my own brother was one of the chaperones in Lexington on the trip, and he allowed his sons to have a beer, and he was all upset that they got suspended. I'm like, they didn't follow the rules. You know, so I think that they're not used to dealing with as many students as we are used to dealing with, and that's why I won't go unless it's all teachers and they know the behavior of the children.
Just one other question. Who's responsible for staying current on State Department advisories, given the level of terrorist activity?
Myself and EF Tour, anytime anything like that comes up, you know, they say, hey, you know, this is happening or that is happening. And I definitely look it all up before we leave, because that's definitely a concern. And I cannot address that just because I can't foresee the future. All I know is when we were in Poland, Boston was being bombed, you know? So we were hearing about it, watching TVs in Poland about the Boston Marathon, you know? And so I definitely keep abreast of what's going on in the world, and especially before we travel. But that has to be a personal thing. I can't say, oh, go, nothing's gonna happen, because I cannot see the future.
I'm doing my own research on EF Tours and about these programs that Kathleen has put on. EF Tours has 50-plus years of an excellent track record.
Yeah.
And from what I've read in reviews, they have done a very nice job keeping all the different schools and all the different stakeholders up to date and current, and seem to have gotten great reviews from across the country.
And that's one of the things where I always try to fill my bus, and then not anymore, because I don't want to travel with anybody else's school, because other schools have different rules, and I'm not following someone else's rules, I'm following our rules. And, you know, so that's one of the things. And the other thing is EF Tours has a tour person that meets us when we land and stays with us and brings us to the airport to depart. They're there to translate, they're there to make sure. My job is to make sure our kids are safe, not to be the tour guide. Their job is to be the tour guide and send their, you know, make sure everything, you know, we're at dinner at a certain time, that we're here, there, you know, if there's anything that is, that we should be nervous about, that tells me that. I explain to the kids, you are not going here, you're going straight here, or anything like that. So they've been excellent at it. Every single person we have had with us the entire trip has been absolutely fabulous. You know, and entertaining the kids and keeping them safe at the same time.
So my only advice on the State Department advisories is make that a two-way dialogue. That is, that not only check before you leave, but while you're there.
While you're there.
Make sure that you're checking with them. Don't wait to hear from them.
Right, exactly. I turn into a different person on this trip. I am absolutely crazy, and they're like, you're usually cool in school, yeah. So.
Ms. Bagley-Jones?
I think that, this trip has been around for a while, and it's been discussed at different times over the years, and we've had these discussions a while ago about how expensive the trip was, and I was really leaning to saying, yes, it is really expensive. And then some friends said, my kid mowed lawns all last summer. My kid did this, and he was really unhappy about doing it. Can you tell him he can't go? Because and I was like, no, never mind. Yeah. So I do think that the planning of it ahead of time is well appreciated, and I do think it's up to kids to earn the money, figure out the money, and that is a good lesson, for them to do. And I'm not worried about the behavior problems at all with Kay Kelly. So I'm glad that you're running the trip, because I think you'll do a great job with it. But I do think kids know ahead of time to raise the money, and it is a good lesson for them. You want to go? This is the amount you have to raise.
Right. Principal Jett asked if he could be one of the chaperones, and I said, well, you would have to listen to me too. Thank you.
Do I have a motion?
I'll move approval of the field trip.
I'll second it.
Moved by Dr. Donahue, seconded by Ms. Varela. Any discussion? On the motion, all in favor? It's unanimous. Thank you.
Thank you.
I have one
Thank
question
you.
before they leave. Could have you filled 2 buses, or was 40 the number?
I think we could, but I could not be responsible for that, to be honest.
Fortunate 40.
Because I need to see everybody at all times.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thanks, guys.
Both of you. Very briefly, I know that you have guests. Just finish up with happenings. We had a very successful end of the school year, and within 72 hours, we had opened, I call it Milton's Summer School Program. As Umbrella said, that's my umbrella term for Milton Summer Enrichment, our special ed programs across the town. And I want to recognize Jonathan Redden. Jonathan Redden really oversees all of the programs, and he works out of central office, but he's on the street for bus duty, and he's in every one of those classrooms, and you have to see summer enrichment. I told the group that met prior, I watched a parent drop off 4 or 5 4-year-olds into the preschool program, and they waved goodbye to the parent, and they went into a brand-new site, and the preschoolers all stay together, but all of the rest of the students in Milton Summers Enrichment choose 4 different offerings, and you have to see it to believe it, and the organization, getting them here in the morning and getting them out at noontime across town. We have special ed programs, Pam Dorsey's Camp Cunningham at the Cunningham School, and later in the summer at another meeting, I'm going to ask Bernadette Moonen Butler to present to you. We're piloting and offering to Milton Public Schools students a invention camp. And so it's going to fully enrolled and for elementary through early middle school. So we've begun. I want to remind parents of students at all levels to check the Milton website if they hadn't checked the backpacks or gotten emails about the summer reading and the summer reading requirements. I'm very happy to announce that our Glover principal, Karen McDevitt, began this week. She hit the ground running, and she sat down with the 2 of us at central office for 5 hours yesterday, and very shortly, parents will be invited, parents and guardians, to 3 or 4 different options, all during the day and night, to meet our new Glover principal. Staff will be invited to 4 different offerings during the next month, and she's planning a student event for students to meet their new Glover principal. There's always the traditional kindergarten opening. So again, we toured the school today. I said to Assistant Superintendent Sheehan, Principal McDevitt is a fast study. I would say, I think this is the room of Leroy, and she'd say Walker. And so she has a map. She's connecting the names with the faces, anxious to meet the students. And I have a very, very positive feeling. And having taught at the Glover, it was like being at home today. And it made me feel very, very good. Dawn Sykes, our new Director of Fine Arts and Family and Consumer Services, has been appointed. I listed in my email blast. She too was here today. Ms. Verla will be very happy, and the viewing audience planning the fall musical. And she's participating in all of the interviewing and appointments of the individuals in the music department, her rising, her replacement, and one other position that we had to fill. We are in the midst of second round of interviews for our athletic director and our PE health department head. We're interviewing, checking references, so I hope by the time we have our next meeting, we'll be able to, in the email blast, share those appointments, share them with the school committee. I would ask Chairman Walker, perhaps at one of your 2 summer meetings, if I brought these 4 new administrative appointments, so the viewing public could connect the names with the faces and get a feel. I think it would be wonderful for them to meet the school committee and for you to, again, be the first to welcome them publicly. Very exciting news, and I will invite the MFE to one of your summer meetings. Today, I probably should let Dr. Pavlicek make this announcement. You want to make that announcement?
Sure,
Oh, no, you go ahead.
The cardio center downstairs, we ordered all the equipment for it today. The flooring was ordered last week. We're now in sort of lead time. We expect equipment to be delivered in roughly 6 weeks. And then we'll be installing the center down there, upgrading some of the equipment in the weight room and installing the new cardio center. And so all with money raised through the MFE.
So you might remember this year's celebration was targeted to teacher grants on their 20th anniversary, when they recognized teachers and administrators with 20 plus years in the district. And their funding need was to upgrade Milton's Wellness Center. And I'm proud to tell you, this MFE is phenomenal, driven totally by parents wanting that wellness center upgraded for their students. And so to hear that the purchase has been done, we've had several meetings with the MFE. They understand the bidding laws. Bill Ritchie is at all of our meetings, the MFE. Dr. Pavlicek takes the lead, works cooperatively with the MFE. That really is a partnership that can't be matched. So that was a big day today. One final reminder, we have a school committee policy that we began last year, and in order to help us making sure that everyone who attends the Milton Public Schools is a resident of the town of Milton, we ask parents and guardians of students going from grades 5 to 6 and 8 to 9, all students who attend Blue Hills Regional, because once you go off to the regional high school, I have no way of knowing if your family's moved, and Blue Hills Regional isn't going to monitor that and then send us a memo, and you pay that tuition. And then I worked with Chairman Walker and the CPAC so that children who are in private special ed programs only have to re-register the same as all children within the Milton Public Schools, 5 to 6, 8 to 9. And I appreciate the feedback from the community. We have a residency coordinator, and again, it's an effort on the part of the families, but I can't tell you the benefits, and if we're going to do the work, then this is the way we do the work well. And so I would tell you, other schools and districts, our residency coordinator and the Milton Police that we work with, and our assistant superintendents are providing guidance to other districts who are implementing residency and want to put in your residency policy and your residency procedures. So a reminder to the viewing public, because we don't want to tie up anybody's entrance back into school at the end of August, but we send several reminders out. And I'll tell you, we leave here many a night at 6 or 6:30, and our residency coordinator makes herself available late particular nights. Does anyone know the nights off the top? I should have come with that written out. You know what, it's on the front of the website, though, what night she's here until 7 and 8 o'clock. Thank you, Chairman Walker.
Ms. Varela, then Ms. Bagley-Jones.
Thanks. I just have a question. It's great news on all of the new materials and equipments coming for the Wellness Center. I know at that celebration too, and I know that as Mr. Jett always says, the high school's more of a community center and not just a high school, but when is the field house open to the community? I know people walk in the morning, and then And then during those hours, will the Wellness Center be available to the community to also use that as well? I think that might have been spoken to, but are they in the morning or at certain night hours, or just the morning, or can you guys speak to
So
that?
I have to tell you, the priority would be for Milton High School and Milton Public School children.
Right,
And then we're appointing a new adult education coordinator, and one of her priorities is to work with Maura Downs and the high school principal and athletic director, and actually put out in the adult ed program. So it will
Like
be
some
through
time.
us, we'll be able to organize it, everybody will know.
Nice.
Years ago, a senior citizen in Milton approached me, and the Milton High School field house, of course, will probably have a huge enrollment tomorrow morning, but all of you aren't seniors. But we open up at 5:30
Right.
for senior citizens.
Right.
And they do laps around the field house.
Yeah.
But we're going to, through our new adult education coordinator, make the wellness center open to residents
nice.
through the program.
Yeah, thanks, great.
Ms. Bagley Jones?
Just a question about the appointment of Dawn Sykes. She's for visual arts as well, right?
Oh, yes, did I say fine
No,
arts?
you said fine arts, but I just wanted to make sure that it was clear she's covering consumer
Absolutely.
studies, music.
Music, all the arts, and the family and consumer studies, and the wood and auto.
Okay. And the women.
Absolutely.
Okay, big job. And then the second thing is that in terms of happenings, and save the date, I know it's a long way away, but October 4th, the Health and Wellness Subcommittee of the Milton School Committee is co-sponsoring a parent panel with the Milton Coalition for Substance Abuse Prevention. And it's going to be a lot of activities and hands-on things, as well as speakers. And we're asking all the principals and all the drama and music people and sports to have nothing scheduled for October
I
4th.
promised you.
And for all of us to be there October 4th as well.
Thank you. We'll add that to every one of our happenings.
Thank you.
You're welcome. First, on the chair's report, as most of you know, we received an application back in April to open a new Wilson Kindleland School. Subsequent to that, we appointed a review committee, which consisted of the superintendent, Assistant Superintendent Sheehan, Collycott Principal Holly Kincannon, and Curriculum Coordinator Amy Gale. They have been hard at work since then, helping us to prepare for both the appropriate discussions regarding the application and also to be prepared to talk with Ms. Veronica Guerrero Macia, and I believe she has members of her board here as well, to go through some of those questions. Two new developments. This morning, Ms. Guerrero Macia informed me that they are now planning for a September 2017 opening rather than September 2016, and also asked if we could narrow this evening's discussion to part of the questions. We asked, just for the viewing public, we asked questions in the following areas: population to be served, physical plant and safety, curriculum, materials, school staff, administration, records, student services, financial support, student learning time, and student performance assessment. What we agreed is that for this evening, we will focus on the curriculum questions, and we'll address the remaining areas and questions at a subsequent school committee meeting. So at this time, I would like to ask Ms. Guerrero Macia and whoever you would like to join you to come up to the table. And I'd like to ask Ms. Kincannon and Ms. Gale to join us at the table next to Dr. Craighead. So if you could introduce everyone, and then we're going to have the superintendent and assistant superintendent lead the discussion for the school committee, so we'll take it from there.
So my name is Veronica Guerrero-Maciá. I'm the founding director of the Wilson Candellin School, and I have with me here our teaching fellow, Juliana Foy, our master teacher, Krista Sinton, and a member of our administration, Marianne Rogers.
Great. Thank you all for coming.
If we might begin, and I want to thank Ms. Concanon and Ms. Gale and Ms. Sheridan for the work, Ms. Sheehan for the work that they've put in going over the materials that you shared with us and preparing for tonight and future meetings on questions on all aspects. And to Mr. Walker's point, there are regulations published by DESE for school systems, all aspects of the program to look into. And so that's where the areas came from. So to begin with, perhaps for the viewing public and for the school committee, could you please describe the Wilson-Candellin method?
The Wilson-Candellin method evolved from Howard Gardner's theory of multiple intelligences. Gardner's theory states that intelligence cannot be measured by simple tests. Instead, the richness of intelligence can be found in many strengths that we as humans demonstrate. The Wilson-Candellin method takes theory and makes it applicable in the classroom milieu. Gardner's work has been extensively published, and work on his theory continues at Harvard to this day. The Wilson-Candellin method works with 6 modalities. A cognitive modality, which is the academic basis of the method. Students study core areas of reading, language arts, science, technology, engineering, and math, geography, social science, and foreign languages. Emotional development, which is the nurturing and opening of a child's love, understanding, and delight in exploring happiness and joy. Interpersonal development, which refers to the relational aspects of a child's development, his participation in group activities and taking on leadership roles. Physiological development, which is an active awareness of and care of everything concerning the physical body. Time spent at free play is essential to strength, balance, and cardiovascular wellness. The Wilson-Candellin method also encourages all families to participate in dental, medical, and optical screenings that are provided at the school to support these areas of health at no cost to the families. Aesthetic development, which is the embracing and full participation in the arts, from singing to drawing to dancing to playing instruments. All of these are central in developing a strong sense of beauty and the sublime. And spiritual development. We believe that all children at Wilson-Candellin, we believe that all children are graced with a sense of the divine and can access that wisdom through meditation and reflection. At Wilson-Candellin, all students participate in daily meditation to focus and center them as they begin their day. So that's the methodology.
So I would ask Ms. Gale, Ms. Concanon, or Ms. Sheehan, or any school committee member if they have follow-up questions. And so these questions were sent to you. And so what is your vision for curriculum at, we refer to the WK school, and how can you explain the process of how this curriculum was developed? Because you gave us, you have it with you tonight, you gave us a sampling, I believe.
Yes.
And so, again, not complete, and just a sampling, and so we really need further understanding to begin with of the vision and the process that you're going to use to develop the curriculum.
So the team, we have a team that develops, the team consisting of myself as the head of school, so I wear 2 hats. I'm the director and I'm also the head of the school, and our master teacher, Krista, we are choosing and adapting all the instructional material ourselves. The units of scope and the units of study and the scope and sequence are based on best practices within each discipline. So we're the ones that putting it together based on what we know are the best practices in the fields. And through that, we have chosen and developed different programs in different academic areas. Do you want me to go into detail about each one of them? Okay. Do you want to do any of these?
Sure.
You want to do the Think Math?
For mathematics, we've chosen the Think Math curriculum.
I'm sorry.
Oh, sorry. For mathematics, we have chosen the Think Math curriculum, which we think has a wonderful focus and is very hands-on, and really just explores each concept at a wonderful level. And for science and technology, we'll be using STEM science projects. For history, I believe we're going to do maybe looking at the Massachusetts standards and doing a lot of supplemental research ourselves and doing community projects. For English and reading, we will be doing the open court, the newest version with the SRA, and it'll be complete with the readers and phonics instruction. In the arts, I believe that we're going to hire a professional artist. Elsa Stemma is going to be part of the arts, which is a music instructional program. And there's going to be a chorus component, and all the students will be learning how to play the violin, which is wonderful. And that's also involved as part of their tuition to learn how to play the violin and to participate in chorus. And then, sorry, for the visual arts, I was saying that we'll be hiring, we'll be following the Milton Public Schools model in hiring a professional artist.
And we also have a physical education specialist who's working with us and teaching the physical education program. The STEM program we're using is called Engineering is Elementary. It was developed out at the Museum of Science, and it's well-researched, and it's been used around the country.
Question, Superintendent Gormley? So I'm just wondering, did you make some revisions since you submitted this? Because
No, it's all in there.
I think for example, for the English language arts, what we noted was that there were materials taken from different, city and town curriculum programs. Some of the Massachusetts curriculum units were in here.
Yeah.
Some pieces of the Lucy Calkins units of study. So we saw sort of bits and pieces of a variety of curriculum programs.
We were still putting it together when we were developing that. We haven't purchased the curriculum yet. We will not purchase curriculum until we have our student body. So we were basing it on basic best practices and what seemed to work. But we can submit if you want the information on open court, but it's pretty much out there for all to see. And it's the newest version. Open court existed, then they folded for a while and they did a new program, and they had the new version, 2016 version, is being published as we speak, and the first year that's going to be using it is 16-17. So we're going to be using it the following year.
So other pieces of English language arts curriculum will not be used. It will be the comprehensive open court program?
Yeah, we're going to be using the whole open court program. Yeah.
And I had another question about, so I understand you cited the research of Howard Gardner and understood, what you were saying about testing and so forth. But I did want to know how you plan to assess student progress and how you plan to monitor that.
Mary Ann, do you want to take this?
Well, the curriculum that we're purchasing does have assessment tools that we're planning to use. We may need to adapt them because we haven't really seen them yet.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. And the Think Math as well will have assessment tools.
So, yeah.
Ms. Varela.
Yeah, so that's, just to follow up from Janet, so the assessment will just be the program assessment for the most part, like the Think Math and Open Court. And then does the science and technology program that you're using also have assessment component to as well? Okay. And then for remind me too, are you just going to open as a K-2 environment, or?
No, we're opening as a K-2, and we will be adding a grade every year.
Okay.
Until we're K-5.
Okay. And as far as, so this is staffing, this would be, the teachers would just be the three of you starting as teachers?
The two of them.
The two of them. So you'd be teaching K-2, and then, and what are you thinking as far as enrollment? I mean, with the curriculum, would you, in the classroom, like what's your goal for the classroom size?
We're looking at about 11 to 20. We're maxing out at 20 students.
Per grade level, yeah?
Per classroom.
Per classroom, okay.
So, and depending how the classrooms play out, we're thinking the first few years, we may have more blended classes, and then as the school grows, we may adapt based on that.
Mm-hmm. Okay, all right,
Based on
thanks.
that, we might change the groupings.
Mm-hmm.
We originally had looked at K-1 in one classroom, 2-3 in another classroom, and then 4-5 in another classroom.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of that's going to depend on enrollment.
Mm-hmm.
Ms. Eberhard?
So in other words, in the beginning, you sort of like a Montessori model where you have mixed age groups in the
Blended
beginning.
classrooms,
Blended
yes.
classrooms. And so basing the school on multiple intelligence theories, you're going to adapt the curriculum programs to fit the multiple intelligence theory. So in other words, so Open Court is a very prescribed reading program, right? And I've worked with the elementary program, the science program from the Museum of Science. It's fabulous, and it is very well research-based, actually. It's a wonderful program. But so you're going to adapt those things to incorporate those 7 principles that you are wanting to use, or those are just the founding principles and you're going to use that curriculum?
The Wilson-Candellin is a methodology, and these
Yes.
are instructional programs that you're talking
Right.
about. So
Mhm.
it's a different level
Right.
of study. I mean, it's a different, and then there's the curriculum units underneath that. So the overlying is the methodology. So that pervades all areas of study without dictating how curriculum is performed, I guess you could say.
Because sometimes a lot of private schools don't use a specific curriculum. They won't use a reading program, or they won't use they will adapt their curriculum based on the principles, their guiding principles. So that's what I was just trying to understand, how those two things fit together as you instruct. That will grow, I'm assuming, over
Yeah.
time. Right, okay.
That's a good question.
Yes, Ms. Baker-Jones.
So I'm a little confused now. The Wilson how do you say?
Candellin.
Candellin. What is that?
I just explained it, that's the methodology.
Right, but I'm saying, so that's the name of the school.
It's methodology.
It's the methodology, but then I don't understand where the Gardner work fits in.
The whole school uses the methodology. The 6 ways of learning is
Okay.
all incorporated
So the 6
into
ways
the
of
way
learning, okay.
that the children
That's-
learn.
Wasn't clear, okay, got that,
Yeah.
thank you. Excuse me, Ms. Gale?
Ms. Gale?
I have 2 questions, actually. One of them is in thinking about your methodology and the importance of the joy of learning, which I totally agree with. I was wondering how you plan to incorporate authentic literature into the literature, non-literature-based program that is Open Court.
I'm thinking, so just through definitely through, we're going to be using the Open Court model, but I think based upon my experience in Milton Public Schools, which I'm so happy to have had, I am trained in Reader's Workshop, so I will be incorporating elements of that. And authentic text will definitely be used throughout Readers and Writers Workshop, through read alouds and through prescribed lessons. So that's where I think some of the blended kind of practice instruction and will just be growing, and kind of just looking at that through time.
Okay. And then my other question has to do with sort of planning the units of study and the curriculum. Have you consulted any research-based programs for curriculum mapping?
Not yet. Sounds like a good idea.
I think it would be helpful. I think it would help you map out sort of the units of study and the timing for those. And then also thinking about a plan for assessment and at what times during the year assessment is important. And the information that you're going to glean from those assessments and how that then fits back into the next steps of the curriculum. So that might be a good next step.
And to Ms. Gale's question, how do you anticipate to support students, tiering students on their ability?
I think that we're going to have the advantage of small class sizes and having 2 teachers. So I think we'll have a lot of flexible groupings and we'll be able to just identify interventions through small groups and additional support daily. And that's what I'm probably most excited about, the small class sizes and being able to work with a teaching fellow. So there's really 2 teachers in a classroom at all times supporting students. So we'll be having ongoing conversations every day and just identifying students that need help so that we can modify our instruction to meet their needs.
All classrooms have a teaching fellow who has a bachelor's degree and is working on her education degree. So she's going to be rolling into a master's speech teacher's position soon. And a master teacher. And then we also have a tutor in each classroom, an in-classroom tutor. Marianne is going to be doing some of the tutoring this first year. So we've got a lot of personnel, a lot of adults who are all highly educated, working with a very small group of children. In a way, it's almost individualized instruction. The numbers that we're looking at, it's going to be extremely small classroom size and a lot of very educated people that know what they're doing in the classroom.
Ms. Varela.
To that point, even though the class ratio, the student to teacher ratio is small, does any of your staff have certification in special ed? You know, that is, if some of the students really have, a more severe learning disability, whether it's reading or, to kind of have training in that background to assess it and then, to put together kind of an IEP, but, a more curriculum-based program for those students. Just was wondering if anyone has that background. Okay.
And on that same area, but when we meet with you again, obviously, Chairman Walker went over the population, the physical plant, all of these things, the materials, the administration, again, put out by DESE, your anticipation of how to keep the records, what your school year is going to look like, your student learning time. But to Ms. Varela's point, options for children who have ELL, English isn't their native language. Consideration?
As an independent school, that's not part of our mandate. And
And so you should know when we meet. So Veronica, when we, if I might, so when we meet another night and we've given you these questions, we're going to talk about.
We're going to be sending them to
Right.
you. We just printed them out for ourselves, and we have the answers to all your questions right here.
And so I think it's important, though, for the school committee, again, issues around economically disadvantaged, social, emotional needs of children, ELE, and students, to Ms. Varela's point, with disabilities. But tonight, it's only addressing the curriculum areas. Ms. Concannon, Ms. Gale?
No, I think having had a chance to look through the binder, it was interesting to hear tonight because it actually didn't match how I interpreted the binder. So it sounds as though you've made some updates along the way. And in the beginning, it sounded like a commitment to open court with fidelity, and the incorporation of readers and writers workshop is different than a full commitment to open court. So I think, Krista, it's wonderful to see you there. I've seen your work. It's amazing. So we just had a few questions about the fidelity of any program. The binder wasn't very, I didn't get a clear vision at all. So I just had some questions, but it sounds like maybe you have had a chance to think about and revise.
Yeah,
since
that,
binder.
I think we sent the binder in, when did we send that to you?
April.
April.
So what you presented
This is a
tonight
new school.
So what you presented tonight is completely different than what you gave us to study.
No, there's a lot of stuff in there that's the same. It's the math program. We actually picked a specific program, and the reading program, we picked a specific program. Everything else in there is what we're using. Those two, we hadn't picked actual curriculum yet. We hadn't picked an instructional program yet. So if you want, we can send you the information on the new instructional programs that we're going to be using instead of the...
From my perspective, tonight's presentation is very different than what we studied in the binder that you gave us.
So before I have the superintendent continue, and then Ms.
Sure.
Eberhard, what I'd like is an updated binder that's as complete as it can possibly be, that reflects the decisions that you've made to date.
Mm-hmm.
And if you could, more than one copy would also be helpful.
There's 2 copies there, aren't there?
No, just one. We only got one. Ms. Sheehan and then Ms. Eberhard.
So I think another difference too is that it was our understanding that you were using the Common Core standards, and I see that you've actually noted the Massachusetts framework. So you're using Common Core plus the additional standards from Massachusetts. So I think that that's maybe a change too since we saw the binder. Additionally, I would just suggest that, I don't know if, I know that a program like Open Court offers leveled readers that may be optional. So are you planning to purchase the leveled readers, which you might be able to incorporate in some readers' workshop practices?
I
They're
think
generally,
definitely
you
in the
know,
younger grades,
include.
yes.
Pardon me?
Sorry, definitely in the younger grades to begin, yes.
You would generally get a good balance of fiction and nonfiction, perhaps. Thank you.
Ms. Eberhard?
So my question sort of has to do with the last part under the curriculum about pursuing national accreditation. I read over several times this, the advisory on approval of private schools, and I'm trying to wrap my head around the process for a private school. You apply, the school committee may approve it. It says right here that you do not have to apply to be a member of, any organization. Who oversees them then as you go forward? That's the part that no matter, like, I've read this thing several times, and I'm trying to understand, if you don't apply to be part of some accreditation agent, some accreditation organization, then who is overseeing all of the things that the school does over time?
So the short answer is that the school committee has the authority to do regular reviews. to
Right, that I
determine-
understood from
Okay.
that, right, yes.
So with regard to curriculum and instruction, and more precisely, as that says, with regard to the thoroughness and efficiency of the program, the school
Right.
committee has the authority to continue to monitor that. But are you asking a different question?
Yeah, so I guess I'm wondering, is your plan to apply to be part of a national like some overseeing private school organization that they do regular reviews and you check in with them and that piece of it?
Yes, we're applying to the, to ASNE, which is the American Independent Schools, the New England branch.
Okay, great.
Dr. Donahue?
So, congratulations. This is hard work. And I admire your gusto in taking this on. One question, one comment. Are you the first of your kind?
Yes, we are.
Wilson
You're
Kinderland
looking
School?
at the Maria Montessori of the Wilson Kinderland schools.
Well, that has its benefits and its drawbacks. And
Yes, it does.
We're making our way through both of those now. The second comment or addition that I would like to see when we get the updated binder is, I imagine for the established curricula, there is a way to relate it to the Massachusetts frameworks and the Common Core standards. It would be helpful if that was included, but also for curricula that is not, that's sort of homegrown and put together by yourselves. It would be helpful if we could match that up with the frameworks and the Common Core curricula so that we can sort of at an easy glance see that you're covering all of the bases that we're covering.
Just to be clear, as an independent school, we do not have to follow the Massachusetts curricular frameworks. We can choose to follow them if we want. So we have flexibility in how we design our curriculum. As long as we meet the DESA requirements, we have flexibility. That's what independent schools are about, is that flexibility.
Then let me rephrase. I would like to see which of the Common Core standards you are electing to dispense with.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. Gale has.
Ms. Gale?
Within the current binder, there was much source material from some various districts. Will you continue to look outside to various districts as you grow your open court version of ELA and your Think Math version of mathematics instruction?
Yeah, yes, we would definitely do that.
Okay. Okay, good to know, thank you.
So Superintendent Gormley, I think you were at the second question of 3B. We didn't get very far. Did you want to ask any more questions?
Well, what I would ask, when we were just going to cover curriculum tonight.
Yes.
And so with Veronica and the chair, setting up subsequent meetings, because tonight's meeting is very different from the material that I asked the team inside to study. And so I would ask if before each meeting, you give us the detail in these 11 areas, and then we're able to share, you present, if it's all right, Jim, you present, and then we ask questions, because, again, we became prepared tonight, we studied this, and tonight's presentation is not what we studied. And so I would ask you in those other areas, if we could have the pre-materials, and then we'll come first and able to ask questions. Again, we became versed on these materials, as Ms. Concanon said, materials from other school districts, you know, a few open court sheets, but no commitment to total open court. Most of the materials are from, you know, really other school districts. And so I would just ask that we get the materials, we'll be versed in the questions, you do the presentation, and we'll know exactly what we're talking about. Tonight, we're familiar with the programs you referred to, but from that material, we were not led to believe that those were going to be the curriculum, or the curricula.
Was Bagley Jones just pensive, or did you have a question?
I'm pensive, and I guess I'm not exactly sure. You know, I've been very, when my kids were young, we were very involved with 2 different Montessori schools. I helped one expand from small to much larger. It's doing very well. So the idea of a different school like this is appealing. I guess I'm just really concerned with, one, the school committee, you know, according to this, needing to have oversight over so many different areas, but then we have no real supervisory duties, but yet we're responsible for it. So I'm very uncomfortable with this whole process. Put that aside, because I think, whatever. I think the next time we hear from you, I would feel a lot more comfortable if the binder matched, if things were just really fleshed out, because I would hate to give approval to something that you were initially beginning this September, but you're delaying it till the next September. So I would assume a lot of this would be well worked out ahead of time. I guess that's more of an editorial comment. It's uncomfortable for me to think about not supporting something like this, but it's uncomfortable for me to think about supporting something that seems a little, not exactly what it needs to be before you take children in. So that wasn't really a question.
That's fine. Dr. Donahue.
And just to clarify my earlier comments, since we're being specific and particular, in addition to the Common Core standards, the Massachusetts frameworks, I'd like to see the relationship of your proposed curriculum to those, with specific notes made to areas that you have elected to dispense with.
Well, I just want to make a comment that we came forward and asked the Milton Committee to do this oversight. We have, I think, 6 private schools in Milton that have not been overseen yet. So we're the first, and I think it's important for us to see this as a process, a collaborative process where we're learning how to do this and we're the first school offering ourselves up to do this. But that Milton Academy should be in this position and Font Bond should be in this position and the two Catholic schools and Thatcher Montessori and Delphi, they should all be here as well presenting their curriculum. So I do think in that spirit, you know.
I think something that would help too is if we could become familiar with how you've mapped the Common Core standards and the frameworks to your curriculum. If you could share that with us, then we could try to replicate that format, and I think it will be simpler to review what we do.
Ms. Bagley-Jones.
And I'm not speaking for anyone else. I personally, that's not as big a concern for me, because when I look at the Montessori schools, they certainly didn't follow Common Core, nor would they, and nor should they. What you're proposing is a very exciting model with a lot of really good, rich things in it. But how do we get, because of our role in this, and the other schools, my understanding, because we looked into it, they've been in existence for a long time. So it's not that they're at the beginning of the phase, which is where you're all at. So I think that's why we don't have the other schools in here, because they've been in existence. We looked into that. Why would we do, but that's why. So others may disagree, but I'm not as concerned, even though I think it's a very valid point. I'd love to see you do something exciting of what you talked about. Just doesn't seem pulled together enough so that's all I'll say.
So I hope that you have listened carefully. The process that we've set up is that we appointed a review committee that we have complete confidence in. So the first step in that process from your perspective is to ensure that that committee has all the information that it needs and it's satisfied with the answers that you've given them. So I would urge you to make sure that that happens, and I hope you've listened to the various comments from school committee members, which were very different, as you might have noticed. But each of those members has to be comfortable as well. So I think, as you correctly point out, this is a process where we certainly expect to do it collaboratively, but at the end of the day, we're taking this approval responsibility very seriously, and the difference between the other independent schools, and I think Member Bagley-Jones alluded to it, but the difference is that they're already operating and you're asking for approval. That's an important difference, and thus the questions and the scrutiny. But I think moving the start date back helps, and I think together we can get through this. So we'll look forward to seeing you sometime soon, and we'll provide the information you asked for, and we hope to see an updated binder as quickly as possible, and the review committee can get to work looking at that. Any questions for us?
Well, I was just wondering, are you going to be able to make information available to us about your curriculum and how it maps to the frameworks and the Common Core standards?
Sure.
You probably realize that the frameworks and the Common Core standards are pretty big documents. So it could be, so we want to do it in a way that makes sense, that is easy to review.
Right, and conversely, if we go to the trouble of providing that, if at the end of the day you're saying we're not going to pay any attention to that, then tell us that at the beginning, because we don't want to spend a lot of time putting together information that's very, very detailed, and then you say, well, as a matter of fact, we're not obligated to follow any of this, and we didn't intend to in the first place. So let's be clear with each other as to if you think that information will be helpful, and you think, to Dr. Donohue's point, that you do expect to make clear how that mapping occurs between the Massachusetts frameworks and Common Core. Happy to do it. We're happy to do it. But let's make sure that you intend to use that information subsequent to
Well,
that.
I suggested it because it seems that that's what the school committee wants to use as criteria to review it. It seems that what people were saying tonight is that they want to look at how things are mapped and understand what Common Core standards and what framework standards we wouldn't be using in the curriculum. So I'm just trying to figure out a way to put information together that's useful, and also this will also let us know what the priority in Milton is for their curriculum.
Assistant Superintendent.
That's helpful to know in this conversation.
Thank you, Chairman Walker. I would just like to point out that I don't think that what you're hearing from members of the school committee or members of the curriculum review committee are looking for you to duplicate or replicate the Milton Public Schools curriculum programs. But it is easy to access curriculum summaries and curriculum information on our district website. So if you go to the website, you will see specific curriculum information for each grade in all of the content areas. You will also see, actually in the music and fine arts curriculum summaries, you will see specific learning standards that are aligned. So in those areas, it's set up that way on the website. Other work that we do around alignment is through professional development, and when we adopt a curriculum, our curriculum coordinators make sure that there's alignment and so forth. I can tell you that Open Court is aligned to the Common Core standards, and I'm sure that there is a summary of that alignment to the Massachusetts standards as well. Generally, those programs do offer that. I would think that Think Math would also have alignment. So that is I think that if you investigate those programs, that you will see how they are aligned to the Common Core and the additional Massachusetts framework standards.
Dr. Donahue.
And just to build on that, I realize you're using several well-known modules for your curriculum. I think it's particularly important, as I said, that specifically for curriculum that you're putting together for broad portions of the curriculum. I believe it was said it was the history curriculum that you said would be in large part put together by yourselves, but maybe I misheard that. So I'm more concerned about those areas that you're taking the initiative and you're putting together, and it seems like an exciting opportunity. I want to know, so I want to see how they sort of line up.
Ms. Gill.
One resource that may be helpful in creating sort of a roadmap is the work of Heidi Hayes-Jacobs, who's done much work around curriculum mapping. And I know when I sit down to do this, it gives me a nice framework within which to work. And her materials are published through ASCD. So that might be a nice resource for you to start with.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Ms. Gale, thank you for coming up from Martha's Vineyard. Ms. Kincannon, thank you very much.
Thank you both.
Next is the appointment of an MASC delegate. As you know, the MASC has an annual conference at which they recommend and approve resolutions. The process is that we get those resolutions in advance as a school committee, vote whether we approve or disapprove of those resolutions, and then send a delegate to act on our behalf at the conference. Since Dr. Craighead has demonstrated an early affinity for resolutions, I thought that she would be the perfect candidate. And I believe, based on my offline conversation, she's willing to serve. So I move that we appoint Dr. Elaine Craighead as our MASC delegate.
Second.
Moved by Walker, seconded by Donahue. Any discussion?
Yes.
She wants to do it.
Okay.
First of all, I'm happy to do it, but it proves the old adage that no good deed goes unpunished. The other thing is that I would very much like, you see on pages 3 and 4 of this, there are a number of different program and panel sessions, and I cannot, even in 3 days, go to all of them. So I will rely on all of you, including the superintendent and the 2 assistant superintendents, to give me feedback on what you think are the most crucial for our district for me to go to. And if everybody's willing to do that, then I'm happy to represent.
Thank you. And I am planning to go as well.
You are?
I am.
Okay, great, then you go the other half.
Yeah,
Ms. Varela?
Yeah, I had signed up initially to go, I wanted to go this year. I know that former member Becky Padera went, but I didn't realize, and I don't know if you guys have any info on this, that when it turned out to be our Milton High School musical same night. And, you know, my daughter Grace had a big supporting role, and I was like, do I miss the role to go down to the Cape? But I would, I mean, I don't know if I could go for all 3 days, but I too, like, if they have a more fleshed out agenda on which panels will be on which days, I'd love to volunteer to go to some, so that maybe between the 3 of us, we could attend more and get the most intel out of it as possible. But I just want to double check on those dates, you know?
Great.
Yeah, I'd love to go, yeah, too.
So Maura, let the record show that members Varela, Walker, and Craighead will all be attending, and will divide up responsibilities for attendance at the sessions. On the motion, all in favor? It's unanimous. Thank you. Approval of vendor warrants. Dr. Pavlicek?
We have 2 since the last meeting. The one you signed last week was number 53, in the amount of $204,535.01. It was dated June 30th. And the one we have tonight is number 54, in the amount of $406,532.74. And that's dated with tomorrow's date, July 7th.
So I'm going to recommend approval of warrant number 53, and I'm going to defer warrant number 54. On the motion, did I have a second? Thank you. On the motion, all in favor? It's unanimous. Thank you.
We will have one more warrant next week to close out the fiscal year. We have to close out the fiscal 16 year by July 15th. So this is the penultimate set of bills. And we'll have one more set next week. And so I will be getting in contact with you for signatures at that point. In fact, we might even have 2 next week, as we'll have to do the first of the fiscal 17 bills, which have to be run separately in a different system and all sorts of fun things. So with the conversion of the payroll, which is being run for the first time in parallel tomorrow morning, and with the conversion of the vendor warrant system with the new year, it's a busy time.
I'll be eager to hear how the payroll goes.
So will I.
Okay, so look forward to hearing from Dr. Pavlicek. Long Range Planning Advisory Subcommittee report, Dr. Donahue.
So we've met several times, I think, since our last report to the committee. We've done some discussion amongst ourselves about the last strategic long-term planning process and what the vision is for this process to try and get it off the ground. I believe we'll be coming to you at our next meeting with some proposals, some of them related to possibly retaining a facilitator for a portion of the long-range planning process. So, and I don't know if Chair Walker has anything else to add.
Only that this process has been one of the longest that I can remember. It started probably in 2013 with members, then members, Kelly, Zulus, and Walker, drafting an RFP, engaging consultants. As it turned out, we had budgeted between $25,000 and $30,000. The bids that we got were between $60,000 and $80,000. So that was a non-starter. This process has been, I think, much more valuable in that we, with the superintendent's help, engaged some individuals within our own community that have expertise. Michael Middleton, Spencer Blasdale, and Steve Paxia, who's a Pierce parent, by the way. The other's a Glover parent. Yeah. And they've been incredibly helpful, both with regard to mapping out what we're calling a strategic roadmap and a deck that explains exactly what we expect to do. But more importantly, they've proposed a much lower cost alternative where we create some working groups internally, also with some members of the community, still fairly small groups, and those groups do some work, then bring recommendations back to the subcommittee and then to the school committee. We think those discussions will work best with a facilitator, but that's a lot less expensive than engaging a consultant to do the whole process. So that's what we're anticipating. The conditional approval I would recommend is that I'd like for you to think about authorizing the chair, the vice chair, and the superintendent to engage a facilitator for a cost not to exceed $30,000. The reason I'm recommending that is that I'm not sure, as I think about the agenda for the July 27th meeting, it's looking a little light. So we may not need to meet. If we don't need to meet, we'd like to engage the facilitator to start in August. If we do meet, then we can have this discussion then and we can vote on it again. But that's my tentative recommendation. Ms. Varela.
So even for the 30,000, where does that, what line item budget, where does that come out? Where does that come from?
I'd include the same language that we've included with our other initiatives, subject to the availability of funds.
Okay.
And we'll ask Dr. Pavlicek if he can identify a source. But the thinking is that what we're trying to accomplish is long-range planning, that to look out, to think about some tentative areas that we've identified, teaching and learning advances, technology in education, teacher professional development, what's going on nationally, what are the best practices, what are the things that are working around the country, and what do we think about how we might incorporate some of those successes here.
So they would then, like you say, come to present to us, and then maybe, as we do like on our yearly goals, incorporate like, okay, so from that list of, suggestions, like what should we tackle in this year, or
exactly.
so that kind of thing. Okay.
Exactly.
Yep.
What are our, and we do a fabulous job on our one-year priorities, but if we're thinking out 2, 3, 4 years, how might those priorities inform our thinking about the budget over a longer period of time? Ms. Bagley-Jones.
So help me out understand a little bit more. So what's the roadmap you're using to get to the point where you can figure out what the priorities would be? Like,
So
what's the criteria?
So what they've suggested, and we'll send these out, they just weren't ready for this meeting. These 3 internal experts that we have.
Oh,
Okay.
the other folks on the
Yeah.
Yeah,
Got it.
okay.
So what's our vision? What are the current initiatives that are very successful? Are there any gaps? What do we think might be some short-term priorities that need to be addressed? Have a discussion about that. Possibly bring in some experts to talk with us about some of these things I just listed. When you put those 2 discussions together, it's what we've been doing, but on a larger scale. That is to say, what are the important priorities that need to be addressed? How do we pick the 1, 2, 3, or 4 that are most important, and then develop a strategy around that?
So if I can, so the folks with you on the committee are going to come back with some of those ideas.
to the school committee,
Yes.
right?
So what would you say at this point is sort of the couple of the top issues?
Too early.
Too early?
We're still in that planning process. We're trying to map out the process.
That's what you meant when you said it was a long process.
Yeah, exactly. We're still trying to map out the process that'll get us there, but it looks like some of those preliminary determinations create some work groups around specific issues. Those work groups make some recommendations that are brought back to the school committee. We say, here's the collective thinking about what the priorities are longer term, and that includes innovation, best practices, those sorts of things.
And so it's not building space-wise.
Say that again.
Are we looking at our population and whether we're going to run out of room soon? Does that belong to consolidate?
That's facilities, yeah. Facilities
okay.
subcommittee,
I just was hearing long-range planning.
Yeah. So we do have a parallel facilities subcommittee planning process.
Okay.
Yeah.
I wasn't sure which one. I went to.
If I could interject, there are, may I?
You go right ahead.
Chair. We have three we should have three parallel long-term planning processes. We should have a facilities process, we should have a financial process, and we should have an academic process. So this is really focusing on the academic component of that intermediate to long-term planning process. And part of why this has been so difficult is we have been on the subcommittee trying to craft a process that gives us a meaningful product, both generally and specifically. We looked at a lot of peer districts and what they had done, and we really felt like the product was not great. So we have been trying to come up with a process to get us to a good product. And that's where we are. We're still sort of trying to solidify the process.
That's a really important point. And then Dr. Craighead, we're doing a lot of things very, very well. So we know that. We're proud of that. We're trying to get to, okay, what's next? And we might need a little help doing that. Dr. Craighead?
Can you explain exactly where you see the facilitator coming in and what that facilitator will be responsible for? Is it just the small groups?
Yes, initially, so that the facilitator would facilitate the work groups where we're trying to answer those questions, and then perhaps a larger group with the school committee.
And on those small groups, are you, between your three subject matter volunteer experts that you have on the committee, I guess along with superintendents, like choosing those other experts that you'd bring in for small groups, are they also, people from the community that would have, subject matter, intel to give on the issues that you guys might want to look into or address, is my question.
So we're thinking on the work groups, which would be focused on particular areas but relatively small, we would ask the superintendent to make recommendations. We could certainly ask school committee members to make recommendations as well. That's different than what we're thinking about nationally recognized experts that we would bring in once those work groups have done some work to comment on the work and to make some suggestions about what's going on locally, regionally, nationally.
Like once those small groups are like, these are the issues we think that need to be addressed, then you could reach out to the national expert.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. Interesting.
Superintendent Gormley.
And so Chairman Walker and Assistant Chair Donahue don't give themselves enough credit. We've met with these individuals, and I think it's important to know that Principals Jett, Dr. Elaine McNeil-Jamai, and Dr. Karen Spalding and I are on the committee. And so since the last meeting, I was given the charge I came up with an email out to all administrators and principals explaining the process and asking them if they wanted to serve on these subcommittees or teachers they think might be staff members interested in serving. The charge was 4 to 5 meetings. We've gotten very specific assignments in those sub areas, and so it will start to engage the school system, which I think will be outstanding.
One more question, sorry. So Mary, do you know through your superintendent's group other school districts that have done this?
Yes.
And had some long-range plannings, and what are the type of things they focused on?
this group, as I said, they don't give themselves enough credit. We've had several meetings, several long meetings, and we did a lot of research about other districts and other strategic long-range planning. And so the three individuals that Chairman Walker spoke to, they bring unbelievable experience in this area. They reviewed we call them sister districts. And again, some of them were implement a elementary world language program, implement a K-12 STEM program. And so I think Chairman Walker addressed it, that we're really looking beyond that. And what, again, we had our advancement initiatives, which are part of any strategic plan, but where is it 5 years from now, and what are the needs of the district? So we did do a lot of comparative work.
Sort of like
if you're
the
interested,
social-emotional curriculum.
no, we're ahead on that.
I'm making a little too.
Oh, I'm sorry. But if you'd like to see, I did do a literature search, so if you'd like to see the strategic plans from, we looked at Wellesley, we looked at a number of other districts, I could send you those.
I just wanted to get my hands around it more. I don't
They're,
get it.
well,
Yeah.
we think that we might take a different approach, let's just say that.
Interesting. Look forward to it.
So I had a tentative motion, I called it. Now I'll make it a real motion.
Okay.
I move that the committee authorize the chair, the vice chair, and the superintendent, subject to the availability of funds, to engage a facilitator for an amount not to exceed $30,000 for the purpose of leading the process that we've described.
Second.
Any discussion? Ms. Eberhard?
So the 30,000 would encompass not just the facilitator, but perhaps some of the experts as well.
Experts,
So
correct.
it's not, the money's not just for the, I went to one meeting, it was very interesting. So I think that piece, they were saying that facilitator would be one part of it, but then there might be, if you're engaging experts, what would you do for that?
There might
Would
be
a stipend, or
small
there would be some offer
honoraria,
of
yeah.
compensation.
Yes.
So it might not be that amount, but that would be the most, I guess.
Yeah, again, like,
Yeah.
as long as we can afford it. I mean, I think it's a fabulous idea. I think it's very interesting, but again, I don't want it at the expense of a paraprofessional, you know what I'm saying? That's all I'm saying.
We would come back
You
with-
know, I mean, as long as the money's available, yeah.
On the motion, all in favor? It's unanimous, thank you.
May I say one thing before?
Yes.
And our two assistants readily accepted the co-chair positions of two different committees on that this morning, so we're off to a swimming start.
Excellent.
Move approval of the May 25th, 2016 minutes.
Second.
Moved by Walker, seconded by Varela. All in favor? It's unanimous. Move approval of the June 8th, 2016 minutes.
Second.
Moved by Walker, seconded by Varela. All in favor? It's unanimous. Next meeting agenda items. Ms. Varela?
If we do meet on the 22nd, the 27th rather, or if it's moved, I would really like an update on the facilities situation and where we are with long-term on space, especially for the pre-K and the K. And, I know that's a huge issue, and it seems like we haven't really heard anything about it. So I would love an update on that, if at all possible.
Certainly.
Policy. We will likely have several policy items at our next meeting, whenever that happens.
Okay.
So,
Anyone for citizen speak more? Move to go into executive session for the purpose of discussing negotiation strategy for non-union personnel, the discussion of which in public session would be detrimental to our negotiating position. Thank you. This is a roll call vote. Ms. Varela?
Yes.
Ms. Bagley Jones?
Yes.
Dr. Donahue?
Yes.
Ms. Eberhard? Dr. Craighead? Mr. Walker is a yes. Thank you.